Hey guys, Mark here. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Mad Sounds. A very special episode, just because obviously you can see by the title, we're going to be going on an hour-long talk about Tom Petty, his legacy, and why despite how big he was, he may have not even gotten the credit he deserved beyond that. We'll get into that later on. I just want to give a couple things off the top that I might have left out. If it wasn't entirely clear by the discussion where I kind of gush about the guy for a while, I'd been a fan of him since I was a kid, and honestly, if I were to make a top 5 list of like my favorite solo artists or like songwriting influences, at least now he would definitely be on there. It might have been a little bit more subconscious earlier, but now it puts everything really into perspective, just how much of a fan of his whole body of work I was. Like at one point I hinted that I'm going to be covering a couple Petty songs for the Fully Involved channel, and I'm definitely going to be doing that over the next week or so definitely stay tuned for that. Fully Involved, in case you guys don't know, is my music project. I just put out an album under that name a couple months ago. Links for everything are like in the little side thing there and the description and all that. I don't want to plug too much, but again, the guy was a major influence on the way that I approach songwriting in some cases. And in fact, something that I forgot to bring up that's kind of funny and really says it all is that, so I never listened to the Into the Great Wide Open album beyond the singles until earlier this year. And there's the song that I've been working on that isn't on that album, that isn't on the album that's already out. It's going to be on the next project. And I'd been working on this song for months before I listened to the Into the Great Wide Open album. Now, on that album, there's a song called All the Wrong Reasons, which is a great song, but I listened to it and I realized, oh crap, I completely ripped it off with this song I'm working on before I'd even heard it. And something about that was just super, eerie to me, and I don't know, maybe it just says something about just his style and how it just pervades everything that it does. I don't know. I'll leave that up to you guys to decide, but that's about it on that. One other detail that I wanted to get around to at some point, but I just never found the spot to, is that one kind of heartbreaking detail, crap, no pun intended on that, sorry, but it's true, is that he was actually pretty high on my bucket list for concerts since I'd never seen him live, and I actually had 2 chances to over the past month or so. One that he was playing Kaboo, the festival in Del Mar in San Diego, and then he played a few nights at the Hollywood Bowl, and I'm in the SoCal area, so I very well could have done that, but it was just, I guess I just found it a little bit out of my budget, and man, if I'd known, then obviously I would have sprung the extra money, no question about it, but you know, it is what it is, and I don't know, maybe I would have been even more distraught if I had just seen him the week before. I don't even know. And the last thing I really want to emphasize that I don't think I was able to at any point in the episode is that even though obviously this is all about Tom, since he's the one that died and he's the leader of the group and all that, the namesake, I would be really remiss not to point out that the other members of the Heartbreakers, the principal members of the Heartbreakers, really helped flesh out and shape the sound of the band to be what it is. Like Benmont Tench in particular is probably my favorite rock keyboardist personally. Like he just added all those right textures to everything and knew exactly what to add in order to just make everything sound so full and be more prominent when he has to be, move a little more in the background when he has to be. Everyone in that band, Mike Campbell, whoever was on the rhythm section at the time, everyone just helped really make that band what it was. And I know that Benmont put out a solo album a few years ago. I haven't heard it, but I heard good stuff about it, and I'll definitely be keeping up with that if you guys do anything in the future. Same thing for Mike Campbell, because he sung lead on one song from Echo, and the guy's got a good voice, in addition to being a really great guitar player. And that's about it. I just wanted to add a couple little words in the beginning here before we get into everything with this episode. If you have any thoughts, please feel free to leave those in the comments. I would love to hear more in the discussion of everything we talk about here, maybe some things we missed. And I also at one point at the end say, to give your top 5 Tom Petty starter pack albums for someone that, only knows a couple of the hits. I think that'd be it's a really interesting conversation to have around this time. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Mad Sounds, and I will see you in the video next week. One, two, three.
There you go. Crisp Golden Boys! Woo!
Welcome everyone to the Deathcast, where we talk about death and nothing but death over these past few weeks. No pulses here, no sir. My name's Mark.
My name is Johnny, and that was the most optimistic I'm gonna be the entire cast.
Frick yes.
Frickin' hell yes. I mean, heck yeah. Jesus is gonna sin me! I'm a sinner! He's gonna penetrate me butthole! That was a callback to a conversation that Mark was not privy to.
It's time to acknowledge the very unfortunate loss of a legend.
Yeah, so this podcast is going to be a celebration, if you will, a testament to how great of a musician the recent legend Tom Petty was. We did this last year when Mr. Bowie passed, and also in a way like with Chester Bennington a couple of months ago, but it's in a different way this time because like when it comes to that situation, like I hope you guys listening know that I was just being a goof in the beginning, right? I hope that people don't just click on this thinking, oh, there's an hour-long thing on Tom Petty, and be like, oh, these guys are dicks. Yeah, no, this is gonna be like we're if you haven't listened to the David Bowie cast, I'd listen to that as like a comparison to how this is gonna be, because the Chester Bennington cast was weird because it happened around. It also had politics associated with it. It didn't have anything to do with the musician. Tom Petty's just old, and he died, and it sucks.
Yeah. So, because like what happened, I was gonna say is that when it comes to Chester Bennington, like what happened with that is that there was just a lot of stuff surrounding the death itself, whether it was around like the mental health issues and like where I was at the time, and like the fact that I came just off a recent album
that sucked
this time around. Yes, and we talked about how to deal with that. But in this case, like it really was a case of it was a heart attack, which not too much like to say about that. And 66 it's less than the normal age, but it's like it's not a shocking age. So it's like not necessarily around that, but it's more just at this point we can, as you say, celebrate his body of work that like if you count Heartbreakers solo, Traveling Wilburys and Mudcrutch goes 20 studio albums just on studio stuff.
And like I had seen a tweet that was a little wrong, to say the least. Like it wasn't defaming or anything, but he said gone in his prime, gone too soon. And I'm like, I wouldn't go that far. Like I didn't want him to die, but it's not like Chester Bennington or Chris Cornell, like they still probably had a lot of years health-wise ahead of them. Tom Petty was getting up there in age. He wasn't David Bowie's age, but he was getting up there. So it's not shocking to me that he died. It wasn't as shocking. Like it sucked, and it was kind of out of nowhere, obviously, but it wasn't as much of a shocker to me as hearing that Chester Bennington died or Chris Cornell, because he was old.
Yeah, I kind of have mixed feelings on the that particular side of the discussion, because the thing is, like, while he was, I feel like this is sort of to a lesser extent what the case was with Bowie, where like he did even up to the point when he died, like he did still put out a super acclaimed album that like showed he was still pushing boundaries and stuff. And the thing is, when it comes to Petty, like the last Heartbreakers album was not only the first album of his at all to go to number one. But it was also one of my favorite albums of 2014, personally. Like, it still showed him pushing in a couple directions he hadn't gone before, a couple stylistic risks, and all the songs were still pretty strong. So I did still feel a little bit of that sting of like, he still had it left in him, you know?
Oh yeah, and I mean, I'm not saying that at all. Like, I'm not trying to say that like he was past his prime, or like, I'm just saying that like, again, he was getting up there, you know? Like, I mean, it was more of a shock to me than hearing that Hugh Hefner died recently, because I was like, oh, that guy should have died like 5 years ago, if anything, because he was old.
Actually, fun fact, I'm not sure if you remember, on a previous episode, you did say that he died.
Yeah, and then he didn't actually die, but this time, he actually is dead. Like, he's a dead guy now. And I don't mean to make ill will of the dead. I'm just saying that it's his passing, while still shocking because I thought he already died, was less shocking to me than hearing that Tom Petty passed, you know?
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I think it's more just unfortunate than shocking.
Yeah.
But I feel like before we go any further, because just so we show that we're not just, you know, two fuckos just jumping on a topic.
Fuckos blaming it around on a fucking microphone like they fucking know something about shit.
I took the word from Hot Diggity Demon.
It just sounded like some British slang. That's why I threw that out there.
I've always wanted to use that word.
I mean, that's
and I just
great.
had the chance.
That's great.
Yeah. But where I was going is that I feel like, just so people know, we probably should give a background on like where exactly we are on Tom Petty, because I feel like compared to the Bowie one, where it almost seems like an inverse of how it was between us there, where you were very well versed in his catalog, at least as much as you could.
I'm a big David Bowie
at least
fan.
At least as much as you could.
Yeah.
For at the amount that he had.
Yeah.
Whereas I was more, you know, I heard a couple records, but was more familiar with like the body of singles work.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. One like.
So yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, like to branch off of that. Yeah, I've only listened to like a couple. I haven't listened to any of his other projects that aren't the Heartbreakers or solo. Like, I've never heard any of those projects whatsoever. I've only heard like Full Moon Fever and the one after that.
It's the Great Wide Open.
Yes.
Wildflowers.
Okay,
so just solo stuff.
Yeah, as far as solo stuff is concerned. But then with like the Heartbreakers, I've heard mostly the acclaimed stuff. But then also I've heard other ones like their 2010 record Mojo. Like when that dropped, that was something that was in my consciousness and that I listened to.
See, that's not one I'd expect a casual fan automatically hop onto. That's interesting.
Like I to me, a casual Petty fan is just someone that knows like Free Fallin' and maybe, like, I was talking to my best friend about
and
this
damn
Torpedoes. Yeah,
Mm.
and not even that. Like I've talked to people that know 2 Petty songs, if that, and they know songs that they didn't even realize were Tom Petty songs. Like my best friend, who knows a lot about music. He's a great music fan, but he really only knew that American Girl and Free Fallin' were Petty songs. He didn't know that Running Down a Dream was also a Petty song. Like I mentioned,
really,
yeah, like so it depends.
And it's pretty similar to American Girl as far as like the tempo and stuff. So, and I'm honestly surprised. I don't really take Petty as the kind of guy where you could where you could hear that voice and think it's someone else.
I mean, it's because he's one of those artists. He's and I'm gonna say this in a really weird way, but follow me here. Tom Petty, to the public eye, as far as like the very casual music fan, their biggest exposure to him was Adam Sandler movies, like ELO. ELO was used a lot in Sandler flicks.
You're so right, and I hate that.
I know, me too, because like I said, I do like Petty. Like, I'm not a diehard fan, but I'm a little more than like a hits guy. Like, I've heard a couple records, but I'm not. It's like you with Bowie. Like, you had heard a couple Bowie records. You were more than a casual fan, but you weren't like a diehard fan.
Yeah, because I think I had heard. I honestly couldn't tell you which ones I had heard in full aside from Black Star. I think maybe Aladdin Sane. But you know what I mean? Like it's still like it was still like an hour worth of singles I had in my iTunes. You know?
Yeah, and like
more than that actually. But I feel like I should probably give my kind of background on this. Like so out of my 21 years, as of a few weeks from now, I would have been a fan of his for at least 11 of them. Like when I was first getting into rock music as a kid, like I'd say the first maybe 5 artists or bands that I got into, you know, up there, because I've talked about before, like the first few albums I owned being by like Def Leppard, Aerosmith, Van Halen, and then among that was Tom Petty, and it was actually my stepdad that first handed me a copy of his greatest hits album.
Okay.
And I think I got Full Moon Fever shortly after that.
That's a good start. I mean, Full Moon Fever is already packed with hits, but it's got some good deep cuts too.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, from there, over the years, I would just get like one album at a time and just gradually be building up this big catalog of stuff. Like Petty is like one of the few guys in my like CD and just music collection in general that I'm trying to be kind of a completionist for, and I haven't really gotten there yet, really. I think I have like maybe a bit under half of the albums and stuff, whether it's in vinyl or CD or whatever else, couple 7 inches. I'm actually putting my microphone on a stack of the CDs right now. Yeah. That wasn't something I told you before recording.
Well, I didn't know that they were all Petty CDs. That's the funny thing.
Yeah, because from bottom to top, we got She's the One, Greatest Hits, Full Moon Fever, Hypnotic Eye, The American Dream Plan B CD single, Into the Great Wide Open, and Highway Companion. So, and then Echo off to the side.
Given that you are such a huge Petty fan, what would you say is your favorite record that he's been a part of, whether it be with Mudcrutch or any of his other projects?
It's honestly tough because I actually thought about the idea of me making a top 5. Yeah. But and honestly, the first 2 records I would immediately point to would be the obvious ones, Damn Torpedoes and Full Moon Fever. Oh, yeah. But I don't want to be too basic about it, but it's like those are the biggest ones for a reason.
Exactly.
But the thing about Tom Petty is that, and this is something that just crystallized in my mind as soon as Tony from Some Jerk with a Camera, he made this big thread about it on Twitter, and I agree wholeheartedly with it, is that Tom was big, but it's like we as the public took him for granted.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because he has this massive string of hits that for the actual legit hits ran from 77 to 96.
Yeah.
If you want to consider Walls the last big song.
Yeah. Well, and that was
even in 2006, Saving Grace peaked at number 100 on the Hot 100.
Keep running for another place to find that saving grace. Don't you, baby?
That's the weird thing, because they play a lot of him at work. They play a lot of Petty at work, but even though I like certain hits of his over others, they don't play those hits that I like. I never hear Running Down a Dream, but I hear Refugee at least 5 times a week. I hear Free Fallin' at least a dozen times a week. They play really specific hits of his, but that's a testament to his actual power as a musician and as a songwriter.
Yeah, because even the Greatest Hits album and stuff, there was still a lot of songs that were on the that got on the Hot 100 over that first streak of records. And where I'm going with that is that because the thing about Tom Petty is that he is the picture of consistency in a rock discography. Yeah. Because I haven't heard the Traveling Wilburys albums yet, but I have at least heard all of the Heartbreakers and solo albums. And I can safely say, even though there's a low point here and there, I'd say Southern Accents and Let Me Up I've Had Enough, in the mid 80s when you can really see he was maybe doing a little too much coke. But but then again, who wasn't doing coke in the 80s?
Yeah.
And like the second record, between the first, You're Gonna Get It, between the first one and Damn Torpedoes, like, wasn't quite as strong. But other than that, like, out of all those records, like, including the newer ones, there honestly isn't an album that I consider a bad first impression.
Okay.
If you're trying to get into him. Like, if you get rid of the idea of, like, you know, The Last DJ doesn't have any big hits on it, like, that still has a lot of great stuff on it and a lot of interesting lyrical themes. Or he is the rare one of those artists with this huge, expansive discography where there isn't that one era where you're like, we don't talk about that one.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I'd say I could count the number of outright bad songs from that I've heard on, like, maybe one hand would be an exaggeration, but it's definitely in the single digits how many, like, are actively, like, ones you want to actively avoid. Even then most of those are spread across, like, just 2 records.
Yeah. It's like a stark contrast. It's a stark contrast to his bad stuff. The ratio to his bad and good stuff is not as even as it is for plenty of other bands that have been around for a long time, or artists that have been around for a long time. Like, again, even as a diehard Rush fan, there are some really not bad, but mediocre things that they've done.
Yeah, and even like a lot of those records I pointed out that stand out, those are from, like, the late 90s and 2000s and stuff. And you were pointing out that you listened to Mojo, like, that's like this super like sprawling, jammy blues rock record that totally came out of nowhere in 2010.
Yeah, it's good though. It's a good record though. Like, yeah. I wouldn't flack that at all.
It's the last time you're gonna hurt me.
And, like, going back to Tony, to Some Jerk with the Camera's thread, like, you pointed out, like, he never did the stupid rock star stuff. Like, he never gotten any dumb tabloid scandals or anything. The closest thing is that in the mid-80s, when he was recording Southern accents, he punched a wall and broke his hand. And that's, like, when you watch the behind the music, when the dark music comes in,
yeah.
It was that.
It all turned around when he punched a wall.
And granted, someone burned his house down once, but that wasn't him.
No.
You know?
Yeah.
That wasn't his stupidity. And, like, if anything, like, the weird moments were, like there was this one part, because the behind the music that was released in the late 90s was uploaded onto YouTube, so I was listening to that. And one really funny thing is, like, how totally anti-industry he was in the late 70s, early 80s, because there was that whole lawsuit surrounding the release of Damn Torpedoes. I'm not sure if you're aware of that.
No, I did not know. Like I said, okay. I don't know anything about his story, no.
Yeah. So it was, like, this whole, like, mess about, like, record companies being swallowed up by other record companies and him wanting creative control and all that. But the funnier version of that came a couple years later when Hard Promises was coming out in 81. The record company wanted to increase the price from $8.99 to $9.99, and he actively fought against that.
Really?
and then they ended up just doing what he said and making it $8.99.
I mean, it's pretty cool. That's pretty rad. Like, I don't know, because, like, you never hear about, like, those meticulous little things of trying to just integrity like that. I don't know, and I don't mean to, like, you know, hold everything up as this grand achievement, but it's just, like, little things like that are just really cool to me. Yeah, he was like, you know? He was, even though, and maybe this is why, and I'm saying this again begrudgingly, because maybe that's why he was a big fan of someone like Adam Sandler, because Tom Petty was like, and I'm not trying to generalize his sound because he does do different things, but he was like, he was so out of the public, like, the tabloid sphere, that he was like the everyman's rocker. He was like, he's got a sound that appeals to so many people, but it's good, you know?
Exactly, because, like, it's like, sure, there was maybe a couple more gated drums in the 80s, maybe maybe like a couple moments where it's like, okay, you can definitely, where like maybe there was like a drum sound here and there where you're like, okay, this was definitely 1985.
Yeah, I mean, that's
especially
like...
especially Long After Dark with some of the synth tones, but they were really good 80s synth tones, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But other than that, like, I think that he's basically what every white guy with an electric guitar writing cool rock songs wants to be.
Yeah.
Like he's just this like normal looking dude, like not particular. He wasn't any kind of like traditional like heartthrob rock star or anything. He was just this dude from Florida that wrote kick-ass rock songs, put him out there, and people liked him for a long time.
Hell yeah! And now, sadly, he's gone. But,
and granted, there is something to admire, like, you know, we're talking about, like, Bowie earlier, and there is something to admire about having that more audacious image and changing up and playing with the aesthetics and the visuals and stuff like that.
But there's also
something to say about someone like going through all these eras and just being about the music. Like he was even weird about the idea of making music videos.
It all has to do with the prerogative of the artist. You know, like someone like David Bowie, that's his act. His act is to be this symbol of a star, you know, and he appeals to people that want to be the same way. That's why Lady Gaga looks up to David Bowie, because Lady Gaga wants to be this version of a performer. You know, it's not just about the music. While the music is quality sometimes, it's also about where their visual direction goes. And Tom Petty cut that bullshit. He was like... He was more like, I want to make music that I genuinely like. Not to say that David Bowie hates what he did, but... No, Tom Petty's ear and eye and ambition was more into how can he improve his craft, not to where can he take his craft. Because that's the thing with Bowie. Bowie was like, what can I do next? What thing can I do that I haven't done? Whereas Tom Petty may have thought the same path, but it wasn't as broadly defined. Like his path was where he was comfortable, where he wanted to expand, and what he wanted to do. And he built a staggering discography as a result of that.
Yeah, you kind of put that perfectly, because outside of like a couple like 80s, because you know like Dave Stewart worked on Southern accents, like you can really hear that on like certain songs. Like it's funny. So I just said Southern Accents was like one of the last album. Like I just heard it in full like yesterday, basically for the first time, and Let Me Up I've Had Enough. And the thing, and one song I will really praise on that is that one song I first heard just a couple months ago when I picked up a 12-inch single of it, the song Make It Better, Forget About Me. It's like this like funk song with horns and stuff. And it's like, but it's like the fact that it took me this long as a fan to get to something like this. And that's not saying that's a bad song. No. It's just really weird for Petty. Yeah. But it's like and you know what? If we're gonna keep comparing legends to legends, like this isn't like an AC/DC case where he just like kept it safe and writing the same song over and over again. No, yeah. Like I said, there were risks. Yeah. But there were risks that made sense for him.
Yeah. Like Tom Petty didn't live on the formula of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's not what I'm trying to say at all. Like AC/DC and plenty of bands like them are okay, but they don't. They stay in this legendary status, but they don't break any new grounds. They break the ground that they started, and that's all they do. And then it ends up them digging themselves a hole. Tom Petty broke a ground, but he paved a road with it. He was like, I'm gonna take a style. I'm gonna take this idea. And I'm gonna drive with it, and I might take a couple detours, but I'm still gonna grow as a result of it. And that's the big difference between AC/DC and Petty.
Yeah, I feel weird because it's like totally different. It's like totally different in some ways, but you know, it's just sometimes it helps to put someone down in order to make a good point about someone else. I don't know.
For sure. No, and I mean that's I don't think you're gonna piss off many AC/DC fans. Because I don't know any AC/DC fan that would admit or that would deny that they were very one-dimensional.
Yeah. But I guess going more into the music itself, like as much as I'd love the idea of doing like a massive deep dive into each record, that's just not real. That's not realistic for right now.
No.
But
especially given my small frame of reference.
Yeah. So I've been listening to basically nothing but Petty over the last like 4 days or so, and I'm gonna say I probably should say how I found out about the news. It was from you, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
so,
shit.
In a way, there are some parallels because okay, I'm getting ahead of myself here. The thing that's kind of eerie about covering Petty at this point is that we were gonna talk about him in this episode anyway, because in what he'd been listening to lately, I just happened to be listening to a couple albums of his. Like I just heard Into the Great Wide Open for the first time, and I was re-listening to songs and music from She's the One. By the way, even songs and music from She's the One, like which was like this like cobbled together soundtrack for a random movie. All the songs on it are still super solid.
Yeah.
Which really goes to show, like he even did a cover of I even showed you he did a cover of a Beck song.
Yeah.
No, Asshole.
Or Asshole, yeah. Fucking A. Yeah, Asshole. It was good.
She'll do anything to make you feel like an asshole.
It's good. Like,
Yeah.
It's still it's
Yeah, it's like the fact he was doing that, but also, but anyway, so that was already going to come up, and there was another person from a band that died. We'll probably get into that on the next episode. Sorry, that some deaths are more important than others for us.
Hey, speak for yourself, mister. I'm kidding. I like the other guy, but I guess Tom Petty's more prolific, isn't he? We're not gonna do a Husker Du special. Fucking A, Mark.
Spoilers.
God damn it, Mark. Fuck.
Spoilers. We might have Crush on the next episode, so
To talk about
maybe
Husker
we'll
Du,
save it for that.
Yeah.
It all works out.
What about Steely Dan, Mark? What about Steely Dan? We didn't do a Steely Dan special. They had a lot of cultural relevance, asshole. Fuck.
They had some nice inverted chords.
Yeah. Look, I'm trying to bring the energy to this very dull, like not dull, but very like solemn cast. That's my way of doing it. So if you're upset at me for not keeping
improv exercises.
Yeah, it's what I'm good at.
So I was in the dining hall.
You're in the dining hall.
Reeling from other events of the weekend that are apparent that I don't want to risk saying bad things about, so I'm just gonna shut up.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden when I was in there, like I was gonna, get my lunch and then head right to class. And then I got that text saying, "So should we do like something on Petty too for this?" And I was like, "Oh no! Did one of the Heartbreakers die? Was it like Mike Campbell, Ben Montench? Look at my feed. Oh no!"
Yeah, the big one.
So I immediately just kind of. So it was, you know what it was? It was like with Chester Bennington, like when I was at that Comic-Con live podcast recording for Dynamic Banter, and I was just left kind of sitting there thinking like, what do I do now?
Yeah.
Because my mind's in like a million places at once. So I just sulked up to my dorm, took that picture that's on my Twitter now of like all the stuff from him I own, and then like I was starting to tear up. I was about to cry, but then my roommate knocked on the door.
Yeah.
And kind of snapped me out of it.
Yeah.
And I just went to class and dealt with it. And of course, like there was that whole thing about, is he really dead?
Yeah, that didn't help things. The journey that was the death of Tom Petty itself was not a fun ride to be a part of.
No, sir.
Well, it's funny because like I learned about it at work, and since I am so connected to the internet, I get notifications about news events. I got notified that Tom Petty died, like from my phone. Yeah, like I was, like the first time, like the initial. So I was like, what the fuck? And so I was checking my phone because it kept vibrating, and I like walked off the line from the kitchen and walked to the back, and I was like, oh shit, Tom Petty's dead. And I talked to my boss about it, and because my boss is a music fan too, and he was like, God damn, that sucks, man. And then as the day was going on, like he went out for a smoke break and I had already seen that he might not be dead yet. And then you messaged me saying, hey, he might not be dead yet. Would that continue the discussion? Like, yeah.
Although in a weird, messed up way, I think that in retrospect, it might have been a good thing that all that was getting in the way, because, like, I didn't just have this one burst where I broke, you know? It was, like, this, like, little by little over the course of the day kind of thing of grieving. So, like, by the end, I was like, okay, I'm ready to get into celebration mode now, you know?
Yeah. It's weird. Like, again, I guess you never think about somebody dying, but like when David Bowie, like, again, we're comparing this to David Bowie a lot, but that's because that's kind of, again, how this podcast is an inverse of it.
Cultural tentpole points over the last couple years,
yeah.
You know.
When he released an album where he talked about death, and then he fucking died. So, like, he even had, like, a little cushion that was like, hey, guys, I might be dying soon. Whereas, like, Tom Petty was just like, nah, I just finished a tour, but I'm fucking dead. And it's like, what the fuck, man?
You know what? It's funny you mention that. Because, so, first off, like, the tour that they just ended, actually, was what they dubbed, like, their last, like, big, like, world tour, maybe even their last national tour, you know?
Yeah.
Because, you know, they were getting up there and just didn't really feel like it anymore, which, understood.
Yeah.
The other thing is that, so, a lot of you guys might not know that Hypnotic Eye was not the last album Tom Petty put out. That was actually the Mudcrutch album from last year, too. And it was a good record, you know, not like one of his landmark ones, but it was a solid bit of, you know, classic folk rock, you know. I really appreciate, actually, just the idea of that project, by the way. In case you guys don't know about Mudcrutch, by the way, like how that formed. So Mudcrutch is actually 3 of the 5 original Heartbreakers, and then 2 other guys. And it was like the band formed before the Heartbreakers happened, like in 74 and stuff like that. Okay. And then, just like when he was going between records in the mid-late 2000s, around like 2008, he was like, hey, I'm going to stop touring stadiums, and I'm just going to get my old band back together and just record now with them and play like mid-sized venues and stuff. Huh. And so he just like did that, and like it does have, I believe, Mike Campbell and Ben Montench, but like has a different rhythm section. And there isn't like a drastic difference in their sounds, but I'd say maybe Mudcrutch sounds a little bit more rootsier. I guess old school, a little bit more old school, a little rootsier, maybe a little less ambitious aside from a few tracks.
There's no horses.
See, I was gonna save that reference for the end.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I was gonna end it with a hearty rendition of Free Horses, but you ruined it.
You know, that's what I do.
I hope
best.
you know that.
I ruin a lot of things, Mark. I ruined my parents' marriage that never fucking happened by being born. You know, I was a ruiner of lives since birth.
So the last record Tom Petty put out. So there were actually 2. When I was re-listening to that album, there are 2 songs on that specifically. I Forgive It All, and the last song, Hungry No More. That's like, those songs are like his Black Star and Lazarus. If you look back at them retrospectively, like they sound like what a guy on his deathbed would say.
Huh.
Kind of like sort of a reflecting on life and like letting go of everything and like being ready to move on. And I'm sure it wasn't an intentional thing.
Yeah.
But it's just context now. Like it gives so much more heaviness to the meaning of those songs, which were already pretty touching.
You can't live on nothing at all. And I ain't gonna be hungry no more.
The whole Chester reflection on Linkin Park's discography. Like, there's always going to be, like, especially, it's going to happen more as you get older, obviously. Like, Tom Petty seems like the kind of guy that even in his 60s, you know, who's had 4 different musical projects, you know, who's had this long life as a musician. At this time in his life, he would start getting, you know, reflective. Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. So, that makes sense, but it does increase its its importance or its precedence as a song when he does pass shortly after it's released. I think in the case of David Bowie, it was just kind of a weird stars aligning. He knew, and he was like, yeah, fuck it.
Yeah, Tom, it's like Tom didn't know, but it's like the parallels when you look at them retrospectively can be, and you can even like look at other like past songs and sort of make connections. So I'm not trying to draw any conspiracy theories here.
Oh no, of course not. It's just kind of an interesting it's an interesting thought that he was starting to feel reflective, and then now he passes like shortly after that. No, I get that. You're pointing out the coincidence in that.
Yeah, totally. You know, I think I want to go back to another point that we kind of touched on, which is that, you know, even though Petty was technically huge, as like a successful artist and stuff, like the fact that he was so consistent about it and so just without many major speed bumps, despite having comeback stories, but like the lows weren't even that low.
No, yeah.
Like it made it so that basically, from what I gather retrospectively, you know, obviously I only started keeping up with this stuff in the mid 2000s as a kid.
Yeah.
But it seems like every point from like Echo onward, like the reaction to a Petty album, because the album's never charted badly. I mean, Hypnotic Eye was his first number one.
Yeah.
But what seems like would happen every time is that people would be like, "Oh, new Tom Petty album," and then the fans picked it up, and then they were like, "Yeah, this is a good album," and then no one really talks about it in retrospect now. Meanwhile, like it still has, like, for example, like the album The Last DJ from 2002. The whole thing about that album is that it's this intensely biting like takedown of the music industry, especially in like the title track of that. Money Becomes King and Joe. That's one that I think is essential listening that gets totally overlooked. It's maybe the most like snarling and angry he's ever been on a song. If you want to hear that side of him, and talking about music industry stuff that is surprisingly still relevant 15 years later.
Yeah, I'll make her look like a spoiled little bitch. She gets to be famous, I get to be rich.
And then also, actually, the album I was listening to right before we started, Echo from 1999.
Okay.
It's this 15-track, like hour-long record, which, you know, for a guy like Petty that doesn't go like super experimental or diverse, even though, you know, there's different styles covering stuff, but it's like that still stays relatively accessible. You wouldn't think that would work all the way through, but every track on it hits, and a lot of it's because there's like this. It was released when he was like in the middle of a bad divorce, and it was like this kind of heartbreaking kind of narrative going throughout it that has a lot of twists and turns and stuff that maybe might not be all intentional as part of like a narrative, but it just it's just if you want to talk about like a unified album statement, I'd say that would be the best one in that regard. So it's like even in the past 15 years, like he was still creating new milestones for himself.
Yeah.
It's the same sad echo all around in my ears. It's the same as the same sad echo around here.
And yeah, it is kind of thing where it's like you could still draw like you know, Damn Torpedoes has the most hits on it, and like Long After Dark is the most the most compositionally tight and simple. Southern Accents does have the most diversity, for better or worse, but still a decent record. And also like if we're just gonna touch on points that I think are worth touching on, like the thing that really stuck out to me, like re-listening to a lot of the stuff about like his lyricism, is that you never really notice, like he never really shoves it in your face that he's telling a story with each song, but it's like he knows like exactly where to put a vivid detail, where to put a more broad universal statement, and it just flows naturally along with the melodies and stuff.
I don't know if I'd go that far. Like when he tells the story, like on some of his songs anyway, like if we're talking about hits like American Girl, Like, he starts off with, she was an American girl built on promises. Like, he's starting a story with that opening line.
I know, but it changes from track to track, obviously. But that's what I'm saying. Like, there's a very good balance there, in his best moments. In my opinion, like again, everything just feels very natural. Like every line. I was trying to think of specific examples, but there's just like a lot of songs, and it's hard to pick out just one. It'd be easier if we were talking about someone with like 3 records. You can be like, oh, this song is the one that does this, but yeah, but yeah, I think you just get the idea.
Well, I mean, that's kind of, I've enjoyed hearing this, because like, again, like, I like Tom Petty, but I would not consider myself a diehard fan. So like it was like how it was during the David Bowie cast to a lesser extent for me, like talking about it as much. I didn't gush as much as you are, much to my chagrin, but I mean, it's interesting to hear you talk about his growth and his, again, where he takes his sound, where he expands upon it, where he wants to grow as a writer with his band, like
yeah, and I mean, the thing is, like, the thing is, I have had like a decade to take in a lot of this work.
And I was gonna say, like, you were saying, like, you put out an album, the fans picked it up, and then it wasn't really reflected upon. And I feel like that's how I got Mojo. So like, yeah, I again, only mostly a popular records guy, but like you said, Mojo's a really weird record for me to have listened to if that's the case. I got Mojo from my first boss. So, at my first job I started back in 2010, I was already friends with everyone that worked there because my mom worked there and she got me a job there, and my boss knew that I was a music head. She knew that I liked music, and she knew that I liked older music like Tom Petty and, David Bowie and stuff, and she was like, well, have you heard the new Tom Petty? And she's that kind of fan. Like, she's that fan that goes out and still buys those new records from older bands that don't necessarily have as much talk, that don't generate as much buzz as they used to. And so she bought Mojo and gave me a copy of it. And so that's how I heard Mojo and got an appreciation for it, was from a fan that had loved that record. And I'm not saying, like, I haven't listened to it since around that time, like, just because it's not something I throw on willy-nilly, but I do, that my exposure to it was because of, and it's because Tom Petty built himself an empire of fans who just love what he does. Like, he's not like Radiohead, who, and I'm not saying that he's lesser than Radiohead, just, he's not Radiohead where every new release is something different, because, or is an event in music, quote unquote, because they do so many different things with their sound. Ever since OKC, if they kept sounding like the Bends, they probably wouldn't have gone anywhere. Or like, even like Pablo Honey, they probably wouldn't have gone anywhere. But because they became this prolific example of experimentation done right, whenever they do an album, it generates news, and it becomes like this, within the internet community, this touchstone of music, because Radiohead still aren't like huge fucking bands, aren't a huge fucking band, they're this weird pariah in music, but Tom Petty, it generated the same thing, just as big of an empire, but well within his own lane. Like we were talking about, he didn't stray too far off of his beaten path. He just merely built upon it. He built this empire off of this style and the sound that, while it deviates sometimes, it still stays consistent. And that's the magic of it. Like you said, Mojo, it's this bluesy or loose record, but it's still fucking great. I remember it very fondly.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that it wouldn't be like, I think I'd maybe put it in the bottom half of my ranking, just because I think it's a little bit, it is like 68 minutes, and it doesn't totally justify it, but there's still a lot of great tracks on there.
Yeah.
And just like the fact that it was this big left turn alone is enough to really give it some level of kudos.
Yeah, and see, that's what I mean, like, it's a left turn for Tom Petty. Like, he's built this empire of this foundation that he can now deviate from without, like, he's not gonna pull a Kid A. Like, Tom Petty's not gonna be like, yeah, I just fucking recorded 200 hours of music and it almost broke up my band and here it is. Like, but that's not a bad thing. That's a testament to how quality his original stuff was. He can build upon it and expand upon it in ways that don't seem too drastic and have it still be quality. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, because I'm thinking like Hypnotic Eye, like it wasn't a uniform change in direction like that, like Highway Companion was very much a folk, like kind of western-y album, singer-songwriter type stuff.
Yeah.
Mojo was the blues album.
Yeah.
Hypnotic Eye went a little bit more all over the place, but the common denominator between all these is that he was still putting out great songs that in a lot of cases rivaled a lot of that past stuff. And I guess why I'm harping on this so much is that I'm thinking about it in comparison to like other bands that I got into around this time that are in a similar ilk as similar to Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers and all that. Specifically like Bon Jovi. You know, like there's no point where it sounds like, okay, he's just making a single for the moms.
Yeah, no.
because he could very well do that. He could just make Free Fallin' 2 the lead single for every album going forward. And again, like the guy is like a master of just like mid-tempo rock songs, and that sounds super underwhelming of a descriptor, but when you listen to him a lot, you know what I'm talking about.
Well, yeah, no, and that's what I was trying to say.
But it's like the effort is still put in when he doesn't have to.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
And that kind of enhances the statement we were saying before, that he didn't really care about his perception or how he was perceived by the music industry. He just wanted to make, like you were saying, he wasn't comfortable making music videos. If you've seen any of his music videos, that's evident, but that's not a bad thing.
Oh yeah,
that's not a bad thing.
It's funny, like he specifically, I think in interviews related to that, he was saying it in reference to "Don't Come Around Here No More," which, funny enough, like is like his most iconic music video.
But it's so bad. It's so
kinda
bad.
Yeah. I mean, the cake scene is iconic.
Yeah, but like it's a great song, but that video is cringy.
Yeah, because I was watching the behind the music, and they show clips of that with clips of videos with voiceover, and you see like the one for The Waiting, which is just like this white soundstage, and the worst of it, and we've heaped praise enough, we can do a little roasting momentarily.
Of course. Yeah.
The worst of it was Jammin' Me, and you probably don't know. It's funny, like that's the biggest song off of Let Me Up, I've Had Enough, but that album wasn't represented at all on the Greatest Hits album. And that album isn't bad, but it's like you can tell the wheels were falling off a little bit in '87.
Yeah.
It was like the
coke
album
habit was taken a little too far.
Yeah, it was like he was hanging out with Stevie Nicks. Of course, he was doing coke in the '80s.
Fucking A, dude.
But yeah, but it's like with that one, it's like they just discovered what a blue screen is.
Yeah.
And like it's like all of it is like you can see the outlines on all the band members, and they're like it's like their time stand still video.
Yeah, it's like I was gonna say the Big Money. Have you seen the Big Money's music video?
I saw a clip of it in the Behind the Music for Rush.
It's so bad.
I know they're on like a board game.
Yeah, it's so 80s. It hurts.
But there's one effect where because the song actually, and it is kind of related to the subject of the song. The song "Jammin' Me," it's basically about someone that's just completely of like being overwhelmed by the media and like everything being thrown at their face at once, which is weird to say in 1987 compared to now.
Yeah.
But so one effect is that like he was reaching into a TV and like pulling out the static, and it's like this like goop in his hands. It's so 1987.
Yeah.
Although thankfully by Into the Great Wide Open, he knew how to make a good video. He knew what he was doing in that department. You know, but
well, and like to kind of tie this all together, because I know that we've tried to justify Tom Petty. Like I don't know if it sounds like that to you, but I feel like part of this podcast has been throughout trying to justify doing a Tom Petty special to those that don't really know. Kind of, yeah, because again, he's kind of taken for granted as like, yep, he's around, but I'm not really gonna give him special attention because he's just always gonna be there. Let's put it into perspective like this. Throughout this entire podcast, we've compared Tom Petty's, not only his discography, but his career to that of so many people that are revered on the internet. Like we've compared him to David Bowie. I compared him to Radiohead just now. Like we've compared him to Rush. We've compared him to handfuls of musicians
Bon
and
Jovi.
artists, and Bon Jovi. Well, I wouldn't say that as a positive comparison, but
no. I'm saying like people we brought up in both positive and negative capacities.
He's even though he is well within, and like I've been saying, he built upon his foundation. He was good enough and consistent enough to be wholly compared to and represented of those that went batshit crazy with their music. That, while yes, more successful with, could easily have flopped. And Tom Petty realized he knew what he wanted. Like I said, he knew what he wanted to do. He knew what he wanted to build upon. And while not everything was holistically successful, nothing entirely flopped. He didn't have an amnesiac. He didn't have anything that some would consider terrible Bowie work. He had a consistently digestible and listenable discography. He was the everyman's rocker.
Yeah, and I'm gonna list off what the worst is. Like, the second album, you're gonna get it. Like, it's not bad. It's just like probably their most like normal classic rock album.
Yeah. Like
from before, like they made the freaking masterpiece, Damn Torpedoes.
Yeah.
There's also those two in the mid '80s Southern accents where maybe they got a little carried away with a couple things, but there's still enough great stuff on there that's like it's pretty easy to overlook. I'm going to say, for anyone listening, if I had to give a top, like, 5 right now, if you were going to come away listening to a top 25% of his studio output...
Yeah, make a top 5 starter kit right now for people who want to get into Tom Petty.
Perfect. Yeah. Actually, I want to make this a challenge to you guys in the comments. If you feel differently from me, because there's a couple albums of his that I'm gonna be leaving out of this that are really hard to leave out, but that you guys might be up in arms about, please leave your top 5 starter packs in the comments, and then if someone's looking through, they can take mine and compare it to the comments and just see what the consensus is. See which ones are like in common in all of them.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna say for a top 5 starter pack, for sure, Damn Torpedoes and Full Moon Fever, without question.
Yeah.
I would also say Hypnotic Eye, if you want the best of like how it was up to the end.
Okay.
I would also say, you know what? I wasn't gonna say before, but re-listening to it now, I'm gonna say Echo.
Okay.
Which may be which is an underrated pick, but I'm gonna say that because it's again probably his best like full album lyrical conceptual statement.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. No. Throw in some underrated picks.
And if you want something that's just like full on pop glory, I would say Long After Dark. I'd say that's where he took like where things maybe got a little bit more glossy, a little bit more big drum sounds, but it was more, if you're like a Cars fan, I would say Long After Dark is the Tom Petty album for you, for example. Like it has You Got Lucky on it. That's like the big hit from it.
Okay.
And actually, I guess my main thing about Let Me Up I've Had Enough is that in its weaker moments, it basically sounded like Long After Dark without the tightness. And Long After Dark is like compositionally airtight.
Okay.
So yeah, those would be my 5. Going chronologically: Damn Torpedoes, Long After Dark, Full Moon Fever, Echo, and Hypnotic Eye. Yeah. Although I would still say a couple tracks off The Last DJ, like the title track and Joe, if you want a side that really angry, pissed off side, that's worth seeking out too.
All right.
And Wildflowers is definitely a fan favorite. I find it maybe a few tracks too long.
I can see that.
I understand that it's like, and I'm saying this as a fan of Ryan Adams, it's the basis for Ryan Adams' whole career.
No, for sure. And I'm saying that not as a fan of Ryan Adams. Like, I like Wildflowers, but no. That's one of my least favorite attributes of it, is that it, like Lord, it spawned so many people.
It all comes back.
It spawned so many people that I cannot fucking stand. The only difference is Tom Petty kept being great. Lord hasn't yet.
It's in 2 albums. I mean, look, again, I'm saying Petty's second album, The third album could
that's
be
why
Lord's Damn
I'm
Torpedoes.
giving Lord the benefit of the doubt. She's still new, but I really hate what she's wrought into the pop scene, and I want her to grow.
That's fair.
I want her to grow. I have faith in her to grow.
You're quoting the last episode verbatim.
I'm being her father right now. Lord, I'm disappointed in you. I want you to be better.
You're being is king above lord, or king and lord like in the in the aristocracy, or are those on the same level?
Lords,
I'm trying to come up with an analogy
and dukes are beneath a king. The king is the king.
So you're king right now.
King. Come on, Lord.
King Johnny.
King Johnny. Move over, King Lear and Hamlet's dad
Kunta?
and Kunt. No, if Kung Fu Kenny wants to step up, he can fucking take it.
I mean, either way, man, it's good to be king and have your own way.
See, we're trying to end this very sad podcast with some laughs, and that's all we can really do. While we've talked about death and sadness, always remember that life does go on. You know, death is inevitable, and we're all gonna die. And I'm getting sad again, but just take solace.
Frick yeah.
Take solace in your life and celebrate things, just like we are Tom Petty. And hopefully, I don't know how much did you want to wrap up, Mark? Because we've been going for a decent amount of time. We've been going for
an hour. Yeah.
So
I'm happy with I'm happy with this. And also, I want to say, over on the Fully Involved channel, I'm planning soon on covering a couple Petty songs. Specifically, I'm not gonna say they're all deep cuts because, you know, a couple of them are like singles, but it's like they weren't like hits, you know. So like I'm gonna say non Hot 100 hits.
I was gonna say, don't do Free Fallin', please. You've
No,
already changed my.
Okay, hang on. I feel the same way about people covering Free Fallin' as Prince diehards probably did when everyone did Purple Rain.
Yes.
He has other stuff.
He does have others. He has so many other great songs.
Like even like I know like Wilco did The Waiting, and like that's a hit, but it's like it's another hit.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, and he's got a lot to choose from. So no excuse to just stick to Free Fall and Coldplay.
Yeah, no, do honestly, like, I'm gonna be honest, Running Down a Dream is my favorite Tom Petty single, like my favorite big song of his, and I feel like it's underappreciated as far as its representation posthumously.
And also, like, I say specifically, like, it might technically be a single, but it wasn't really a hit because there were 7 singles released off Full Moon Fever. I don't know if you know that.
That was a fucking huge record.
I had no. It's like one of those '80s albums where it's like predominantly singles. You know,
it was a.
It's like it's his hysteria.
Yeah, it was a high seller. Like it was his. As far as the poposphere is concerned, it's his opus.
Yeah, although it's weird because like if you talk to more like the music nerd crowd, Damn Torpedoes or Wildflowers are definitely the more
that's why I said the poposphere.
And it's like it's yeah. I do think it's weird that he's technically never had a top 5 hit. I was looking into his discography, and like Free Fallin', I think peaked at like number 7 or 8. I found that interesting.
That wholly doesn't surprise me, only because there were other contemporaries that were making more stadium-esque songs, like Springsteen. Like Springsteen was making like Born in the USA. Like he was making like fucking like anthems for the stadiums, and Tom Petty was doing that, but in his own way that isn't. It's accessible, but it's not like as over generalizingly accessible as like his contemporaries were.
I guess it is kind of representative of like, you know, he was never like the guy, but he was just kind of always there, like in the 20s and 30s. Occasionally, it's like he's gotten 2 top 10s. The other one being "Don't Do Me Like That." It's weird. I was actually looking. American Girl never technically charted.
Well, and that's the thing.
It was just like look back on retrospect. And another little factoid. I'm gonna go on your thing, but that I found interesting when I was looking at the behind the music is that technically his first hit was Anything That's Rock and Roll from the first album, which was like in the top 20 in the UK before anything else. And I just found that interesting because that's not really a song that gets a lot of airplay.
No, it's not.
Oh, baby, let's go. Throw you in the rock and roll. Playing on the radio sounds so right. Call you up, gravel. Everybody got the note. Anything that's rock and roll's fine. This rock and roll's fine. This rock and roll's fine.
Well, and that's the thing, like, the other song that they play a lot at work is Refugee. Did I say Refugee earlier?
Okay. Yeah. I think so. Yeah, you said they played like basically.
Yeah,
every
they
day.
do Refugee, American Girl, and Free Fallin'. Those are. Like
I'm very
the
jealous.
three big
Again,
ones.
your Five Guys is so much more killing the playlist game than the bagel shop I used to be at.
Before we do close out, they've started playing Concrete and Gold songs. Do you know what ones they're playing?
What?
They're playing The Line and White River or whatever the fucking song is. They're playing those songs.
I still haven't heard the album, but I know those aren't like I would expect the Sky's a Neighborhood.
They just started playing that. Like they were playing those other two before Sky is a Neighborhood.
That's nuts.
They also play Feet Don't Fail Me off the new Queens of Stone Age record.
That's not even a single.
I know! They're just fucking playing those songs. It's great. Like,
have you met the guy that makes these playlists?
No, but I need to.
And just given him a hug?
It's corporate generated. Like corporate picks those songs.
You can pull some strings and go to that corporate building, that office.
Be like, hey,
and just go to the cubicle of the one guy that organizes it.
It's gonna be Melon.
Say thank you.
It's gonna be Melon. Spoiler, it's gonna be Melon. Thank you for listening to the Mad Sounds podcast.
Has he ever talked about Tom Petty before? I don't know.
I mean, he tweeted about it. I wouldn't say like he came into prominence well after, again, his quote-unquote relevance in music journalism was a thing because he was just doing his own thing. Like you said, we took him for granted. Yeah.
I think that's about as far as we can go, honestly.
We've kind of.
It's funny. We were gonna have a third on here, but I think we did pretty well.
Yeah,
already.
I think we did pretty swell. We talked a lot of, for someone who again is not a Petty diehard. I'm amazed with how much I could actually talk about Tom Petty.
Yeah, I was impressed too because I couldn't say that much about Bowie.
Yeah.
So because of the fact that it's the inverse right now, like, yeah.
It's cool. Anyway, thank you all for listening. If you're listening to us on iTunes,
if you
oh, sorry, you're good.
I'm editing this. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Listen, buddy. Listen. Don't come around here no more. Okay, because I'm clicking around my iTunes for something. Because you're gonna go down swinging. Because. I'm not counting on you to. I'm just naming deep cuts now because me blowing up right now is when a kid goes bad. I'm Zero from outer space. I'm
free falling, man. I don't know what to do.
And I'm free.
Free horses.
Subscribe on iTunes.
Rest in peace, Tom Petty. We love you.
Rate and review Tom Petty.
Sub to the channel.
Rest in peace, us on iTunes.
Sub to the discography. Go give us a like on the porch. Just do that. Like our porches, you know.
Give a Ben Montage some love. I want to see some stuff from the Heartbreakers going forward, by the way.
Yeah, so go do that. And we'll see you next time for hopefully something that's not focused around death.
Thank you for listening to the Deathcast, where we talk about no living beings whatsoever.
Oh, my corpse is here! Oh my god, I love me some dead bodies! Let's talk about it!
It's the podcast without a pulse in the best way possible.
We don't need the other Mark here because he has a pulse. This is the Deathcast, where we are a good death podcast for people who like death podcasts. We're talking about Spectrum Pulse, by the way.
And even next time, if we don't have a death to talk about, we'll just talk about Death Grips or Cutie
or From Above
something.
1979 or the death metal band Death or
not speaking of 1979, Damn Torpedoes is a really good album.
It's a good time. Oh boy, editing Mark, I hope you're cutting this out at some point, man. Because
no.
I'm sorry, my levels are all over the place.
No, this is very entertaining.
Is it? I don't know. Is it entertaining?
As long as we maintain this tone of voice, then everything is contributing to the bit.
I've already lost my voice. I've already lost it, Mark. I lost it in the wild. Into the Wild.
Come on, man. We already had it for our third.
Starring Eddie Vedder's song Into the Wild.
Speaking of Eddie Vedder, that's another guy that influenced a lot of bad people, so maybe it wasn't worth it.
Yeah, maybe. I'm going to stop recording now.
Rest in peace.